Now, some tips and tricks before I go straight to the kind of question usually asked. Be an excellent listener. Okay, listen to the entire question from internal and external examiner. Okay, most of the time, many times we see students they do not really listen question properly and try to answer, or even before the examiner finish question, they start answering the question. Please don't do that. Once the question is posed to you, then you should be taking time. Allow yourself to, arrange the kind of your thinking, and then the answers that you have in your mind. So take some time. It's not that when the question is asked, immediately you have to answer the question. You can take a bit time. Pause for a while. Prepare yourself. Then only start talking, okay? And always give the credit for asking question. How can you do that? I have a slide for you afterwards, okay? Respond question to bridge the next questions. When you are answering the first question, make sure you know what kind of answers could be there immediately after that, okay? So you have to keep that bridging. So you have to forecast, predict what question could be after this question. So do not get caught by giving an answer in the first question whereby you will get caught in the second question. Be careful on that, okay? Keep communicating. You start asking question like, once you answer the question, ask the examiner, does that answer your questions? Okay, be polite. Or is that kind of information you are looking for? Keep communicating, keep talking to people. That's because it's basically an interview session. Okay, so keep communicating with the panel members. This is how you got to be, keep communicating and giving credit to the members who is asking questions. So once they ask you a question, you tell, thank you for the question, all right? So that give examiner a bit, feeling of ease, right? Then you can always say, that was a good question. So you are giving credit to the panel members. That is an interesting question. And then sometimes when the examiners give you some comments and say, yes, you are right, of course you are right. Okay, and then sometime when the examiner find you are not answering the question and he rephrase the question, then you say, thank you for that, I am very aware of it. So that's how you can be very polite and you keep engaging yourself with the examiners. If you do that, basically you will be controlling the interview session, the VIVA VOCE session. The question and answer session will be coming in your hand. Basically, you are going to control the session because you are interacting and communicating with the examiners, all right? So you got to be very good in communication skills and PR skills to keep yourself engaged with the examiners. Now, if you find something very difficult, that's what Prof. Shukriya earlier was trying to answer to you. So if you find something not very familiar with you, you cannot really answer the question. You just say, sorry, I am not familiar with this work. I'm very sorry, this is not familiar to me. There's nothing wrong with that. We do not expect you to know everything of the world. Your PhD is basically in a very specific, small, concise area. We don't expect you to know everything. So the area that you focus on your PhD, there could be thousands of papers published. We don't expect you to read all papers. As long as you read all the key papers and recent papers, you are safe. So you may not have read a paper that is published 5 years before, even 2 years before, papers did not come in notice to you. So you just say, I'm sorry, I did not get hold of this paper. I did not really read that. So I'm not familiar with that. You can always say that. You're not expected to read everything in that area, okay? And then, do you think this would further strengthen my thesis, meaning that when you, a panel member is giving a suggestion, so you are asking back that question, do you think, Prof, that is going to strengthen my thesis? If the Prof said definitely yes, then you say, okay, I will consult with my supervisors and we'll add on, we'll add on with that idea and incorporate that idea in my thesis, okay? And then when you have interpretations of your data and you find that panel members do not agree and they give a different interpretation, you can always say that perhaps this could be an alternative interpretation of my data. But the way I interpret it is also not wrong. You can always tell that, I remember there was one of my students' PhD thesis where Prof. Shukri was the chairman. And my student used PLS and he has 2 dependent variables. And the internal examiner argued that in PLS, you cannot use 2 dependent variables. You cannot run that. So, and the student says, no, I can. Why I cannot? So the internal examiner sees that he cannot. And because of that, he said the student has to resubmit the thesis. So now you can imagine, what can I do as a supervisor? I know the student is right, the examiner is wrong. So what can I do as a supervisor? So I politely asked permission from the chairman. Prof. Shukri was the chairman. I think Prof. Shukri still remembers. So I said, basically, Prof, SPSS is the third generation software. In SPSS, if we can use two dependent variables, why we can't use in PLS, which is a fourth generation language, fourth generation software? And still the internal examiner is not convinced, So Prof. Shukri said, even though I am not from social science or business, but the way student responded all the questions, the way the student handled the session, I don't think the students should go for resubmission. That's what he said. As a chairman, he made a rule there. He said, we may give him major correction because supervisor even said he is right. So I told the internal examiner, okay, I will get an email response from Prof. Ramaya. I think you know him, expert in Malaysia on PLS. He said he doesn't want that. He wanted me to get a response from Professor here, Joseph here, the father of PLS in the world. Can you imagine? So after the session, I have to write an email to Prof here. And then after 3 days, I didn't get reply. So I have to look for new email. I emailed to him. Then he answered. He said, you have done what is right. Then I forwarded to the internal examiner, the chairman. So that kind of situation also happens. You are right, but the panel members say you are wrong. So that kind of situation, that the supervisor has to come to rescue you. And you can be polite and still you got to be strong because you know you are right. Okay?